Content warning. Episodes of Gray Matter may contain themes and depictions of extreme mental illness, traumatic bodily harm, and death. If you aren't in the right headspace to engage with those depictions right now, maybe this episode should wait for another time. Otherwise, proceed with caution.
Hey, welcome back to Gray Matter Video. Are you alright? You look a little, shitty. No, I understand. I get pretty low energy myself sometimes, just standing around waiting for victims, customers all day. You know what, though? I've got just the tape. Now, a lot of our stories are pretty dour, disturbing, decrepit? I don't know, something else with a D. Our stories can get pretty depressing. That's a good one. Our stories can be all of those D words I just said, plus a couple more probably. But every now and then, every person gets a case of the Spielbergs, where they want monsters and scares wrapped up in a fun, family-friendly package. This still isn't quite family-friendly, but it will be fun. It's called Lock the Door, and it's about a thought that every single one of us has had. What if, against all odds and beyond all reason, lurking in the darkness just behind your open closet door, is a monster? How did it get there? What does it want? Why does it smell your hair while you're asleep? These are questions we've all asked, but what if there really was an answer? Would you want to know? Would it satisfy you? Time to find out.
Lock the Door, written and directed by Jonathan Inbody.
Okay, the emergency numbers are on the counter. Josh's inhaler is on the nightstand next to his bed, and there's frozen pizzas in the downstairs freezer next to the dog food. Thanks again for babysitting, Britt. I really needed a night out. Work's been hell.
No problem, Mrs. Parker. I have homework to do anyway. What have you been working on?
Just some government contract. They've got 20 of us sitting in a conference room 8 hours a day writing down long-form theoretical physics. If you want my advice, don't try to make a living doing math. Even if you're good at it, it's boring. Look, I can get a backup sitter, if you ever have plans or anything. And I don't mean track practice. I feel bad stealing all your weekends. I'm sure there are boys or girls, whoever, from school who want to take you out to a movie or dinner? I don't know, whatever high schoolers do now.
I don't really like doing what high schoolers do now.
Okay, you're only young once, There's no honors classes in the real world. Listen to me. I'm such a mom.
Don't forget your keys.
Right, keys. Thank you, Britt. I'm leaving, Josh. Listen to Britt. She's in charge.
Okay. Bye, Mom.
You can put him to bed at 10. I'll try to be back by 11:30 maybe.
Take your time. Have fun. Another Friday night. Not like I had anything else to do. Just chemistry homework and studying for a history quiz on Monday. Besides, Josh was a good kid. Smart for his age. It wasn't his fault that his dad wasn't around, or that his mom worked long hours. And anyway, I needed the money.
What'd you bring me?
Hey, buddy. Don't run, or we're not going to watch any of them.
Okay, sorry. What'd you bring, though?
Well, I know you said you wanted a Bigfoot movie, so I brought Legend of Boggy Creek, and then I brought the next Halloween movie, too. We're on 4, right?
We're on 3.
Yeah, but 3 doesn't even have Michael Myers in it. It's got masks that turn kids' heads into bugs.
That sounds amazing!
Okay, well, I'll bring that one next time. For now, I've got 4.
And Boggy Creek's got a Bigfoot in it?
Yeah. It's kind of scary, though. You might have to cover your eyes a couple times.
I'll be brave.
I know you will, buddy. But if you keep having nightmares, then your mom's going to start wondering where you get all these scary ideas from. And if she finds out, then she's not going to let me babysit you anymore. And that means no more Freddy, no more Chucky, no more any of it. Hey, where's Puck?
He's in my room. Ever since he saw the monster in my closet, he won't leave except to eat and go outside.
There's a monster in your closet? Aren't you a little old for that?
Puck saw him first. He woke me up in the middle of the night growling at the door, and I went over to see what he was growling at, and then I saw it.
What's it look like?
He's big, long arms, covered in brown stringy hair. He's got a face like a gorilla, but with shiny red eyes.
You mean like Bigfoot?
Yeah. He smells, too. Like wet dog and rotten eggs.
Is that why you wanted me to bring a Bigfoot movie? Well, if he's anything like the monsters I had in my closet as a kid, then he's harmless, and he'll just go away as soon as you stop being scared of him.
It's hard when he stares at me.
Just remember, monsters aren't real, okay? And if they were, I can outrun them. Number 2 sprinter in the county, remember? All right, I'm going to get a pizza started and feed Puck. Do you want to pick which movie we're watching first and get it ready to play?
Sure.
Don't run! I put a frozen pizza in the oven and filled Puck's food bowl, then waited for him to come running down the hall. Usually I'd hear him running as soon as he recognized the sound of the food hitting the bottom of his dish, but tonight he was nowhere to be seen. I walked down the hall and leaned my head into Josh's room. There, the small dog was lying in front of the open closet door, staring intently inside. When he heard me come in, he turned his head to look at me. Come on, Puck, food's out. Are you okay? Don't you want dinner? Puck turned his head back towards the door and growled again. The hair on the back of his neck seemed to bristle, and his nose twitched and sniffed at the empty air. Whatever he thought was in there, it seemed to really have him spooked. I stepped into the room and walked over to the closet, pushing Puck an inch or 2 on the carpet with my foot as I squinted into the dark. The air near the closet smelled a little strange, almost burnt, or thick with the faded crackle of an electrical short. But as far as I could tell, there was nothing inside. Just clothes dangling down on hangers and... I stumbled back and fell to the ground, startling Puck to his feet as he started furiously barking. From the dark, deep inside the closet, a glowing red eye was shining out. After a second of terrified silence, I laughed at how jumpy I was and shook my head. I got to my feet, turned on the closet light, then reached between a pair of hanging jackets and pulled out a light-up watch. Josh, did you put this here to scare me? Because it worked. All right, come on, Puck. Dinner time. For the next couple of hours, everything was normal. Josh and I ate pizza and watched the movies I'd brought, pausing once or twice so he could ask me a question about something that went over his head. After that, I put him to bed and started on my chemistry homework, nibbling on carrots and celery sticks from the fridge whenever I felt like snacking. Their house was old and creaky in a way you'd only notice if you were the only one left awake. I looked out the picture window in the living room at the trees lining the edge of the property. There was no wind, just the stillness of a quiet, rural night. Past the trees were open fields, winding creeks, and the long, dust-speckled roads where I practiced my running. It felt good to be done with school for a couple of days, away from all the social pressures and high expectations. At least when I was babysitting, I could feel like an adult. I was trusted, responsible, needed. Josh, everything okay? Come on, buddy, you're supposed to be asleep. Josh stared out at me from underneath his blankets, his face pale and his eyes wide with fear. His little hands were shaking, clutching the sheets tight to his chest like he was in a straitjacket. What's wrong?
He's here.
I looked across the dark room to the dresser next to the closet, then down at the ground beneath it, where a broken lamp sat flickering on the ground. It's just the lamp that fell, Josh. There's nothing else there. Puck? Is that you? My eyes darted over to the dark closet as the broken lamp flickered like a lazy strobe light. Maybe my eyes were playing tricks on me, but I swore I could see something in there. Some shape. Was it just a coat? As I stood staring, 2 huge red eyes opened and met mine. Then unseen lips peeled back to reveal a crooked set of jagged yellow teeth. The guttural growl grew louder as a thin, broad-shouldered creature stepped out of the dark and into the flickering light, its long, sinewy arms dangling limply at its sides. The thing tilted back its head and bared its glittering fangs as it shook the stringy tangles of brown hair out from in front of its bloodshot eyes. It was like something out of a nightmare. The tall, emaciated form of a stretched-out ghoul with the ratty hair and lean musculature of a chimp. The creature, the monster, grunted and opened its mouth, dribbling saliva down its hairy chin as its wild eyes darted back and forth between Josh and I in feral calculation. Puck came bolting down the hall and shot into the room, then leapt at the closet with teeth bared. He sank his jaws into one of the creature's hands, and it shrieked, flailing back and forth wildly as I pulled Josh out of the bed and half-dragged him into the hall.
What about Puck? We can't just leave him!
We'll come back for him later, but we have to go! If we can just get to my car...
He killed Puck! He killed him!
Josh, wait! We can't stop now! I turned to look at the end of the hall, where a mangled lump that used to be a dog sat crumpled below a bright red splatter on the wall opposite Josh's bedroom door. Then, an elongated, ape-like foot stepped out of the doorway, and the wild-eyed creature lurched into the hall, grunting with bizarre glee as it took in our horrified faces. Josh, you have to hide.
But what about you?
I'm going to try and get it out of the house. If it chases me outside, you lock the door and you call the cops.
He's gonna kill you!
Go! I turned and sprinted for the front door. Behind me, I heard Josh scramble for a hiding place, then the shambling charge of the creature as it tore down the hall after me. I ran through the kitchen and reached out for the door, but before I could pull it open, I felt the thing slam into my back. It shoved me into the door, slamming my head against the wood with one huge hand as it grabbed for my throat with the other in an animalistic frenzy. I could feel its hot breath on the back of my neck, hear its manic squealing just behind my ears. Suddenly, it whirled and threw me into the side of the kitchen table, then shrieked and bounded towards me on all fours. I kicked at it wildly, gasping in a few panicked breaths, then stuck my hand out for whatever I could reach and found a chair. I swung my arm forward and smashed the chair against the side of its head, splintering the wood into pieces as the bizarre thing stumbled backwards. The creature pawed at the side of its head, crudely jabbing fingers at a caved-in spot of its skull as thick red blood began to pour down. It ran down through its matted hair, past a bulging red eye, and over its top lip, where it started to stain its yellowed teeth. For a second, the thing just looked at me in a quiet rage, like it was waiting to see if I had anything else to hurt it. Then, it shot both hands forward, grabbed my face, and shoved my head down to bounce it against the hardwood floor. My vision went blurry, and I flailed, swatting at it desperately to try and get it off of me. In a second, its hands were wrapped around my throat, the tips of its long fingers digging into the sides of my neck. It was throttling me, thrashing me back and forth on the floor as it tried to crush my windpipe or snap my neck. As its vice grip tightened, blackness began to seep in at the edges of my vision. I couldn't breathe, couldn't overpower it, couldn't get away. I could feel my eyes bulging out of my head, the veins in my forehead pounding painfully, and I knew this is what it felt like to die. It was killing me. The creature's grip went slack and it slumped over, sliding off of me as it collapsed to the floor. Josh was standing behind it, his little hands wrapped around a smoking gun. I thought I told you to hide.
He was gonna kill you.
I know, but I didn't want him to kill you, too.
I shot him. I killed Bigfoot.
Josh, are you okay?
I can't. I need I need my inhaler.
Oh, shit. I scrambled to my feet and picked Josh up, then quickly looked over to make sure the monster on the floor wasn't moving. 2 bullet holes sat smoldering in the creature's hair-covered back, and the third bullet seemed to have hit it in the face. Its bottom jaw was barely attached, hanging half-shattered below the rest of its head, surrounded by splintered bits of yellow teeth. The creature's eyes, once glowing red, had settled into a dull crimson. What the hell was that thing? Where did it come from? I ran the questions over in my mind as I carried Josh back down the hall, trying to keep from throwing up as the adrenaline surged through me. I could feel my legs shaking, but I couldn't stop. Not yet. The kid needed me. I stumbled into Josh's room and put him down on the bed, then grabbed his inhaler from the bedside table and put it into his hands. He popped the cap off and inhaled, closing his eyes as he took in a deep breath of his medicine. I turned to look at the closet. How had that thing gotten in there? I pushed aside hanging clothes and pressed my hands up against the back wall, testing it to check for a hidden door or to see if it was hollow. It was impossible, but there was nothing. Suddenly, a pinprick point of blinding light appeared in the center of the wall, and the smell of a crackling electrical burn returned to my nose. The glowing point grew into a vertical line of pure blinding white, then widened into a glowing rectangle and began to slowly rotate. After a full turn, the rectangle shot out in all directions, the brilliant light spreading to fully consume the back wall of the closet.
What's that?
I think it's a door. We need to hide.
What? Why?
Under the bed. Quick!
But what's that mean, not transmitting?
It could mean a couple of things. I won't know until I have access. Just because this is state-of-the-art technology doesn't mean it doesn't need QA testing.
Yeah, but is it dead, or did we just lose the control chip?
I don't know. We have to find it first.
I peeked out from under the bed, squinting to get a better look at the new arrivals. There were 2 men in black suits standing in Josh's bedroom, their silhouettes bathed in the white light shining out of the closet behind them. One of them looked around at the state of the room, then glanced over at the other. As they cautiously moved towards the hall, I saw one of them rest their hand on a holster.
Holy hell, look at this place. He turned that dog into a goddamn bobblehead.
What about the door? Do we just leave it open?
It doesn't matter. We're only going to be here a couple of minutes. Now help me find the... Oh, shit. They killed it. Home base, we got targets in the wind. Abigail and Joshua Parker. Yeah, one of the physicists. We're going to sweep the house, but let's send in a cleanup team. No, it's dead. As far as I can tell, yeah. You getting any biometrics on your end? The swamp ape, or Bigfoot, or whatever you call it. Its face is splattered all over the kitchen floor. Yeah. Over and out.
What'd they say?
About what?
What do we do if we find the target and her kid?
2 to the back of the head, make it look like a home invasion. The other cover's blown already. What a clusterfuck.
How old did you say the kid is?
I don't know. Young. Why?
Because I just found a textbook for 11th grade chemistry.
Fuck. Home base, we had 2 confirmed life signs, correct? A male child and an older female. Did anyone check to make sure it was the mother? Well, double check.
Name in the book says Britt McKenzie.
Home base, the mother wasn't even here. Female life sign was the babysitter.
So where's the mother?
How the hell am I supposed to know? No, home base, I was not talking to you. But while I've got you on the line, can I put in a formal request for a black bag order on our recon team? Tom and I are swinging the fucking wind here. What's the point of a cover-up if it brings more attention? Use monsters, they said. No one will believe the witnesses, they said.
This whole thing's a mess. All these people working for us, all these contractors all over. None of them even had enough pieces to put the whole picture together. But the second the door actually works, we start cleaning them up like spilled milk. What do we do if the cops show up?
I don't know. Just shut the fuck up and search the house. If anyone sees that body, the whole project's done. I'll get in touch with surveillance, see if we can get eyes on the mother and on the babysitter's house. Maybe they...
Car's still in the driveway.
And they have to be... Check all the exits. We're doing a full house sweep. Live round safety off. Hopefully we can get this contained right here.
Britt, what are we gonna do?
I don't know.
They're gonna find us.
No, they won't. Just stay quiet.
You hear something?
No? What?
I thought I heard voices. I'm gonna search the bedroom. Joshua? Britt? You guys in here? If you come out now, I won't hurt you. Jay? Everything all right? Jay? Home base! It's not dead! It's not!
I slowly reached out a hand and pushed aside the blanket dangling down from the edge of the bed. The man in the black suit was lying in a crumpled heap on the carpeted floor, and although his body was facing away from me, his head was facing mine. I tried not to look at his glassy eyes. Behind the dead man stood a pair of ape-like legs. Josh, you've got to run, okay? Run into the light in the closet where those men came from.
But
There's no time to argue, just... The bed went flying above us as the creature threw it aside, staring down at us with bright red eyes as its lower jaw dangled underneath its face, suspended by a single tendon. Its yellow teeth were almost completely shattered, leaving only shards of bloody bone in their place. I grabbed the back of Josh's shirt and yanked him up as I jumped to my feet, then pushed him forward as I dove towards the creature. The thing reached out to grab him, and I brought my foot down into the side of its kneecap. Its leg folded in half with a loud crack, and it toppled to the carpeted floor, angrily grabbing for my ankles as I pulled my feet out of its reach. I looked up at the wall of blinding light inside the closet, then looked around the room. Josh was nowhere to be seen. He must have gone through. Well, here goes nothing. I sprinted across the room at full speed and took a running leap into the glowing white doorway. Waves of heat and flashes of arcing electricity rolled over me in a steady, pulsing rhythm as I soared into the empty void of brilliant white. And then suddenly I felt like I was falling. I plunged downward as a shimmering square of black and gray shot up to meet me, and I tucked my arms and legs in just before I burst through. Suddenly, I landed on a metal floor, then rolled as I landed and sprang to my feet. Thank you, 3.5 years of gymnastics. Steam rose up from my clothes as I looked at my new surroundings, and somewhere in the pit of my stomach I felt like I was going to be sick. I was standing in a large, mostly metal room, surrounded by complicated machines and thick industrial wiring. Behind me, an identical white doorway glowed from inside a thick metal frame, and when I turned to look in front of me, I saw a shocked group of people in suits and lab coats staring at me from behind a wall of transparent glass. I felt a small hand grab mine, and I looked down to see Josh beside me.
come on!
As Josh dragged me towards a nearby door, I stared blankly at the observers on the other side of the glass. One of them, a woman in a lab coat with a messy bun and glasses, raised a phone to her ear and started talking to someone. Josh pushed open the heavy door and pulled me out into a narrow hallway, then looked up at me as I tried to regain my composure. In a second, we were running again. It was here. It had followed us. It was still after us, bounding out through the metal door on 2 arms and only 1 working leg, like some frenzied, half-dead thing out of a nightmare. Our own personal boogeyman was lurching down the hall, and he was gaining on us. The hallway started to curve ahead of us, then opened up into a larger room. As we ran through it, I glanced at the walls and felt my blood run suddenly cold. The circular room was lined with 2 long rows of glass cylinders, holding cells for the things inside them. There were hideous, monstrous beasts of every shape and size imaginable, some numbered and others labeled, all of them only half visible in the soft light shining up from the floor. Mothman, the Chupacabra, the Jersey Devil, each one was more horrific than the last, staring out at us from behind the thick glass with an all too familiar pair of bright red eyes. They were all asleep, or trapped in some kind of forced hibernation, crouching, sitting, or standing hunched in an eerie stillness as we rushed past. As we emerged from the circular room into another long hallway, I turned to look at the ape thing chasing us. It, Bigfoot, or whatever code name its handlers preferred, was getting closer by the second, even as injured as it was. There had to be something that... A door! I grabbed the handle and shouldered it open, then pulled Josh inside and slammed it behind me. I pressed myself against it just in time to feel the weight of the ape thing slam against the metal, and as I gritted my teeth and dug my heels in, I turned back to look at the room we just entered. People in suits and lab coats stared at us in shock, and I recognized a few faces. We were in the observation room, the one I'd seen from the other side of the glass. The creature slammed into the door again, and the scientists jumped, some gasping and others frantically dialing their phones as the metal door dented inward and one of its hinges bounced out across the floor. On the other side of the glass, I could see the glowing doorway. There had to be a way back inside, back to the Parkers' house. If we could get through and shut it down... Suddenly, the heavy door behind us fell forward, pinning Josh and I underneath it, and after a second I felt the lurching weight of the shambling creature climbing over it. I could hear the creature's gurgling, heaving breaths as its weight pressed down onto my back, and beside me I watched Josh's mouth open and close in a desperate attempt to breathe. He was suffocating under the weight of the door, under the weight of that thing. Someone in the control room screamed, and the monster leapt forward onto the ground, dragging its mangled leg behind it as trickles of blood dripped down to the floor from its torn-off jaw. I slid my arms under my shoulders and started to push. I didn't have long. The metal door moved slowly, and as it shifted, I looked up into the control room to see what was happening. People were screaming and trying to flee, abandoning their desks and trampling each other in a mad dash for the far wall. A woman at the back of the crowd misstepped and fell over, then screamed as the ape thing dove down onto her. She raised an arm to protect her face, and the creature latched onto it, crushing her fingers with a cacophony of snaps. Then it grabbed her broken fingers, two in each hand, and started to pull. Her flesh started to tear, her palm ripping in two, and as the bloody seam spread down her wrist to her forearm, her scream rose to an ear-splitting shriek. The creature threw her mangled arm aside, and its hand shot to her throat, gripping it tightly to stifle her screams. Its hands flexed, crushing her windpipe, and the creature howled with satisfaction as her face went suddenly slack. Then, in one swift motion, it swung her limp body over its head and tossed her aside into a wall-mounted panel of electronic controls. Her body convulsed as arcs of electricity bounded across the panel and onto a line of mounted computers, shattering screens and frying processing towers in a sudden explosion of sparks. Josh crawled out from underneath me as I held the metal door up on my trembling shoulders, then got up and started to push. After a second, the door gave, sliding off my exhausted back and slamming to the ground. Josh reached for my hands and helped me to my feet, leaning me against a nearby table as I tried to get back my balance. At the other end of the long, narrow room, the Bigfoot was separating a man's head from his shoulders, howling manically as the people nearby cowered underneath overturned desks.
Britt, look at the door!
I turned back to the observation glass to look at the room where we had come in. Inside, the bulky machinery surrounding the glowing door was beginning to spark, smoke, and catch fire, and the blinding white light in the doorway was starting to flicker. I swept Josh up into my arms and staggered back out into the hallway, then froze as a loud hydraulic hiss suddenly echoed out of the room from ahead of us. I clutched Josh close to me as I walked cautiously forward, then stared in mounting horror as the glass cages lining the walls of the circular room began to slowly open one by one. Inside, I could hear the things stirring. Hold on tight, okay, buddy? I don't want to drop you.
Britt, you said you can outrun the monsters, right?
Watch me. I sprinted forward, hoisting Josh up onto my shoulder to free up a hand as creatures of every size and shape began to stumble out of their cells. In only a moment, we were surrounded by a rippling, heaving wall of bright red eyes. I ducked underneath an amphibian arm, then leapt over a crocodilian head, then shoved my way past a white-haired wolf man and grabbed an insectoid pincer as it swung down to stab me. I pulled, toppling the bizarre, armored thing attached to it down to the metal floor, then stomped on the back of its neck and kept moving. The things were sluggish, almost lethargic, lurching aimlessly towards us in what seemed like slow motion, and as I rushed through the crowd of things poured out of nightmares, I realized we might actually make it. When we got to the hallway, the crowd of hideous creatures seemed to spill out of the room behind us, chittering and screeching and groaning as they reached out to stop us. The longer they were awake, the faster they were moving, and before we knew it, they'd be right behind us again. I took a sharp turn and slid into the room with the glowing doorway, almost throwing Josh off of my shoulder and onto his feet. Go! Go through the door!
What about you?
Just go! I watched him go through, felt the hot wash of relief, then turned back to the door. The things were already on our heels, filling the doorway with a tangle of hooves, claws, and tentacles, shoving against each other as each one struggled to be the first one through, drunk on the furious triumph of an unexpected hunt. I looked over at the glass observation wall and found it splattered with streaks of dark red blood and smeared with viscera. I could see the torn apart bodies on the other side, strewn across tables and smashed through computers. But where was the thing that had done it? The glass wall shattered, and a metal chair flew through, bouncing and then skidding across the floor until it hit the wall next to me. Only a split second behind it, the ape thing leapt through the wall of broken, inch-thick glass, shredding its own flesh on the sharp edges as it bounded through. It landed on its fists and pushed itself up to loom over me, its matted hair slick and shiny with deep red blood, and ravenous, bloody drool streamed down the edge of its torn-off jaw as it let out a victorious howl. It lowered, ready to pounce, and at the second it started to move, I turned and dove into the flickering doorway. I landed in Josh's closet with a thump, then scrambled forward on all fours as the blinding light behind me strobed faster and faster. It was pulsing now, flashing in a rainbow of colors, changing quicker than I could even process. An ape-like hand shot out through the portal and grabbed my ankle, then dragged me back towards the doorway on my stomach with terrifying strength. I grabbed the sides of the closet with both hands, fingers sliding and fingernails scraping as my leg was pulled back through the glowing door. Josh ran to my side and grabbed my wrists. He tried his best to pull, but only skidded forward on the carpet and lost his grip. He fell back to the floor, and I lurched into the closet, then rolled onto my back and blindly kicked my free foot into the glowing doorway. I felt my foot hit something hard with a wet, sickening smash, then pulled it back and kicked it again even harder. All at once, the grip on my ankle loosened and I pulled my leg back into the closet, shuffling back frantically on the carpet as the blinding light flickered off. Was it over? The white doorway surged suddenly back on, pulsing and rippling at its edges like it was threatening to explode. As I watched, the gaunt, ape-like head emerge from inside the blinding light, its shattered jaw stretched out in a hideous rictus grin underneath its piercing red eyes. When its long hand curled around the edge of the doorway, I think I screamed. It was coming. It was still coming. Would it ever stop? I covered my eyes as a blinding flash of light consumed everything, but in only a second it disappeared altogether. Where the glowing doorway had been, there was nothing. Only the back wall of the closet streaked with blood and twitching, hairy fingers writhing on the carpeted floor, with steam rising up from where they had been instantly cauterized at the knuckle. I dragged myself out of the closet and collapsed on Josh's floor, then took a few heaving breaths in and out. Next to me, Josh sat in terrified silence, staring at the blank wall without blinking. You okay, buddy?
No.
Yeah, me neither.
Hey guys, I'm home. Oh my God!
It's been 2 months now. 2 months since the chaos, the sirens, the concerned EMTs, and skeptical cops. Josh and Miss Parker moved away. I don't know where, but I know they're using different names. There hasn't been a day since that I haven't thought about it. Those things, that place, whatever they were up to. Were they gone now or just rebuilding? Did they know who I was? I ran the questions through my head over and over, trying to convince myself that it really was finished. But at night, every night, when I'm lying in bed, my eyes drift over to the closet. I look to make sure the door is closed. I listen for sounds in the dark. And sometimes, through the crack at the bottom of the door, I swear I can see a flash of light.
Lock the Door was written and directed by Jonathan Inbody. It was edited by Jeffrey Lavin, with music composed and performed by Samantha Hunt. Britt, the narrator, was played by Charleston Harvey. Miss Parker was played by Andrea Inbody, and Samantha Hunt played Josh. The Men in Black were played by Jonathan Inbody and Quinn Farmer. Gray Matter is a Word Search Media production. Any similarities to real people, places, or things is purely coincidental. Be kind. Rewind.